Hey book lovers, I'm Elise and welcome back to my channel. So today is the start of a brand new series on my channel. I've considered myself a fairly eclectic reader. I read a little bit of everything as far as genre goes. When people ask me what my favorite genre is, I don't know. I used to think that it was thriller, but I feel like lately thriller books just haven't been doing it for me. You would think that it's sci-fi because of my sci-fi book club, Libranauts, but honestly, I have no idea. So that's why I'm launching this new series on my channel, Book Genre Showdown. This is a chance for me to really delve in deep to each genre and figure out truly what is my favorite genre. This is of course the very first episode, and this episode focuses on the genre thriller. Each episode is going to feature 3 different books of the genre that I'll be reading. I'll be reading a new release in that genre, a new to me author, and a backlist. So for this episode, the new release book that I will be reading is Home is Where the Bodies Are by Jeneva Rose. The backlist book is The Hunting Wives by Cobb, and the new to me author, The Chateau by Jaclyn Goldis. So throughout these episodes, I'm going to be ranking these books based on 4 things that I look for in a book. Some of my favorite elements of a book that really could make or break it for me. Those elements include atmosphere. How atmospheric is this book? How pulled into the setting am I? Characters. Do I care about the characters at all? Because I really need to feel connected to characters if I'm going to enjoy the book. Twists and surprises. I love when a book can surprise the heck out of me. And it doesn't have to just be thrillers. Tons of books in various genres have surprising elements. That's just something I'm looking for. Something that blows my mind and makes me go, wow. And finally, the hook. How quickly was I hooked into the book? Because obviously a book that I can start reading and I'm hooked immediately is good. So based on those 4 elements, I give each book a score. And then of course at the end of the video, I compare the scores of the 3 books that I read. And as the series goes on, I will keep track of what each genre scored. Essentially by the end of it, the genre that has the highest score is probably what I'm going to deem my favorite genre. So in this video, I do start out first with Home is Where the Bodies Are. So let's get started. I'm about halfway through Home is Where the Bodies Are. It did not hook me immediately, but not super far into the book did it hook me. So a little bit of a bummer there. I do have the audiobook for this. I tried to start reading it without, and my brain was just kind of like all over the place. So I did end up using an Audible credit to get the audiobook for this. I am buddy reading this with Keisha, so we're kind of doing updates as we go on Marco Polo. This book is about 3 estranged siblings. Their mom recently passed, and in going over her will and getting all of her, possessions figured out, they come across this VHS and they pop it into the VCR and they start watching it. And at first it's just like a random day in the summer of 1999 when they were kids, and their mom was just kind of following them around with the camcorder. And then it cuts to a scene where their mom comes upon their dad, and he's like covered in blood, and they're discussing the disposal of a body. Now the siblings are like, okay, what's going on here? This isn't good. Between that video and then some of the mom's journals that she left behind, they're trying to piece together what happened, why did it happen, and any additional details that they can come up with. Am I intrigued? I mean, obviously I want to know what happens, and I do have a couple ideas of people that we maybe can't trust as much as we think we can. And then also there's like a couple mysteries within the story, and I have a theory for both, I guess. I don't know. I am at least intrigued enough to try to be figuring out what happened. Right now it is kind of feeling like a 3-star for me. I think that's kind of my issue with thrillers, is like if they're done really, really well, they can be amazing. Otherwise I'm so bored with them. And it's not that I'm bored with this, I'm just like, I don't know. For being such a short book, like you'd expect a little bit more action, and there's not really. I like the flashbacks into the 90s, into 1999, because I'm a 90s baby. 99, I was 9 years old. One of the flashbacks takes place at this carnival type event. That's kind of cool and nostalgic, and it actually reminds me a little bit of Stranger Things season 3 when there's that huge summer carnival going on. One of the issues that I do have is I don't really like books that talk about addiction. It just is not something that interests me. It's not something I want to read about. And I know that, especially with thrillers, that's a fairly common thing that characters will have to make their story more interesting. And one of the siblings, Nicole, she is an addict. I'm not loving that. And I mean, I shouldn't say I always hate it, because I loved the clinic, and the clinic takes place at a rehab facility. A lot of the characters are dealing with an addiction of some kind, and that didn't really bother me. But here again, it took place at a rehab facility. I kind of went into the book expecting that to be a thing. In books like this, where only one of the characters is an addict, it's almost like a tool that the author uses for you to kind of second guess. Maybe I shouldn't be listening to this character. You know, maybe I should be cautious when this character is telling me something, and I just don't like that. Her addiction seems like a red herring to me. I will let you know when I have more thoughts. So I finished Home is Where the Bodies Are, and I have to say I am disappointed. This is my third Jeneva Rose book, and it didn't do for me what the other two books did, unfortunately. I don't remember there being any major twists in One of Us is Dead, aside from the fact of finding out who the dead person is. But aside from that, I don't remember anything like particularly mind-blowing. For You Shouldn't Have Come Here, that one had a pretty good twist ending. This one, there were a couple things that were slightly surprising, but kind of like the major thing I guessed at pretty soon into the book. As far as pacing goes, the middle of the book, it dragged and I was not really into it. But the ending was fairly entertaining. Even though the major twist I did see coming, the ending, the events that took place in the end were still pretty captivating. So like the last, at least, I would say maybe like the last 50 pages or so were kind of when I was really starting to get into it. Overall, my least favorite Jeneva Rose, kind of a bummer. Also too, I discovered, because I was buddy reading this with Keisha, she mentioned that there is a section at the end of the book, something about like VHS tapes in the 90s. I don't have that section, and also there's a lot of covers that have like a handprint, a bloody handprint. Mine doesn't have that, and I don't know why. I don't know why my edition is different. Let's get this book a rating. As far as the atmosphere, I did like the flashbacks to the 90s and kind of there weren't like many references to it being the 90s in those flashbacks, aside from like some of the music that was talked about. Other than that, like it didn't feel super descriptive, or the writing wasn't magical by any means. For atmosphere for this one, I'm gonna give it a 3. The characters. I didn't fall for any of the characters, and I don't mean fall for in a romantic sense. I mean, I like when I can read a book and I get really attached to a character, and then they're kind of who I'm rooting for throughout the story, or I just really feel like I know them. And I didn't really get that from this book. I think all the characters were done well for the purposes of the story, but for me and my enjoyment, not so much. For characters, I'm giving this one a 3. As far as surprises, the main twist I predicted, but there were a couple other things that I found kind of cool to have been included. Nothing major, but well, one of them, I don't know. One of them was kind of major-ish. One of the other things was more of just like a detail. I did like that, even though the main twist did not blow my mind. I did like some of the other surprises that were thrown in there. For surprises, I'm going to give it a 4. And for hook, did this book hook me right off the bat? No, it did not. In fact, I started the book reading it physically. I only got a couple pages in before I was like, I need the audiobook to be able to pay attention to this. Did not hook me right away. It did take me quite a few chapters to feel like I was fully invested into the story. For hook, I'm going to give this one a 2. Overall, that brought us to 12 points out of 20, which is 60%, which brings us to a 3 for this book. So now that I have my new release thriller option out of the way, next I'm going to move on to my backlist option, which is The Hunting Wives by Cobb. I am not quite 100 pages into this yet. 83 pages. So I'm 83 pages into this. I do typically gravitate towards like rich people drama, and I don't necessarily know if that's part of the thrill of this book yet. I mean, kind of. I think the main character's name is Sophie. Yeah, Sophie O'Neill. So we have Sophie, and she and her husband and their son, they have recently moved to this smallish, well-to-do town in Texas called Mapleton. Sophie comes from kind of a broken family. So I think her dad left and her mom, she was a travel ER nurse, so she was moving them constantly around the country, like all the time. So Sophie doesn't really know much stability. I'm a little iffy about her. I don't know. I feel like there's more to Sophie than what we've been shown so far. I'm not 100% sure that I trust her as the main character, but they moved to this town, Mapleton. Sophie and Graham were living in the Chicago area and they wanted to relocate somewhere, you know, a little bit slower paced, and a lot of the residents there, they are, you know, wealthier. So like married couples, the women are usually stay-at-home moms and the husbands are like CEOs, or one of them's a surgeon, I think. I guess you could say rich people drama is kind of what's going on here. I was kind of pulled in right away, more so than Home is Where the Bodies Are, but not like full tilt, you know what I mean? There's this group of women and Sophie first starts kind of stalking the leader of this group of women, Margot, and she's kind of forming like an unhealthy obsession with her. It's kind of honestly kind of verging on like a sapphic obsession. Eventually, Sophie is kind of inducted into this group of women. They call themselves the Hunting Wives, and they keep their meetings like hush hush. The first one that Sophie goes to, they have to drive really far out to where Margot lives. I don't even know if it's her primary house or just like the lake house or something, but they have to drive out there. They are shooting shotguns and drinking wine, and then Margot talks about wanting to go hunting, and they're not talking about animals. So apparently, to curtail the boredom that these women feel in their marriages, they go to these honky-tonk bars, as they refer to them, that are, you know, a ways out from the town that they live in for obvious reasons, and they just shamelessly flirt and dance and maybe even make out with guys at this bar. One of their rules is, because they do have a couple rules, and one of them is you never go all the way. So it's like they're cheating, but in their minds, they're not fully cheating. I'm very intrigued. Like I said, I'm a little apprehensive about Sophie. I don't really know what to expect from her and her storyline. I'm sensing something that may not be quite right. I don't have the audiobook for this one, so I am getting through it a little bit slower. That's where I'm at. I'll give you an update once I've read more. I'm really liking this. I'm now on page 155, so I've read quite a bit more, and not quite halfway, but almost there. The thing about this book is like it's not obviously thrillery. Like not a whole lot has happened that's makes me feel like it's a thriller, but I do kind of get this sense that like things are gearing up. The secrets that are being kept and the very taboo activities that are taking place. But yeah, I'm enjoying this. And you know, I feel like this reminds me a little bit of The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz, in the sense that there's like some sapphic tension. We're not really sure if it's real tension or if it's just an obsession or maybe a little bit of both. That part's exciting. Definitely some unhinged things taking place, some behaviors that these women are plenty old enough to know better. I'm having a good time. Fun story. So I was looking on Instagram. I was trying to see if anybody has done any fan casting because I'm trying to figure out who to picture for everybody. And really the only character that I had a vision for is Margot. And so Margot, like I said earlier, she's kind of the leader of the Hunting Wives. And then there's also Callie, Tina, and Jill, and then now Sophie. I was looking up the Hunting Wives hashtag on Instagram, and I found a post from Brittany Snow from back in April. They're turning this into a show on Starz. What? I'm very much looking forward to seeing an adaptation of this. So I was like, ooh, I can look up the cast. I love that Brittany Snow is Sophie. I'm fine with that. And like I said, I didn't really picture anybody for Callie, Tina, and Jill. For Margot, though, in the book, she's described as having olive skin and like raven black hair, and her eyes have been described as like charcoal, but I think also like a gray color. So that part's a little confusing. But anyways, I was kind of envisioning Olivia Munn as Margot, but they did end up casting Malin Ackerman. So here's the thing. I was initially not very happy about that because I'm like, that does not match the physical description, and now I have to like readjust my expectations of what this character looks like. I don't know if in the show they're going to dye her hair dark. She has had dark hair in roles before, but I don't know if they're going to go that route. But personality wise, now that I have found out that Milan Ackerman is playing Margot, and I read a little bit more envisioning her as Margot, I can see it. So I do think that that was a good casting choice, but it is a little hard for me to let go of Olivia Munn. It's kind of fun too, like getting to know some of the other characters, some of the other women of the Hunting Wives group. So far I like Jill and I like Tina. Callie kind of comes off as like, she's very possessive over Margot. And so we've not really been able to get a very close look at her as a character. And to be honest, I don't really like her very much as of right now. But Jill and Tina I like. Sophie, I don't know. I still have thoughts about Sophie. Like, she can't be trusted. And Margot, she's an unlikable character, but she's meant to be unlikable. Margot is who she is, and unapologetically so, to the point where, yes, she's unlikable, but I kind of like her as a character. I don't know if I can finish this today. That would be awesome if I could. I'm having a great time reading it right now. And it's interesting because I've heard so many mixed reviews of this book. I'm going to get back to it. Hi, hello. We're going to pretend that my bed is actually made behind me. I wanted to talk to you about The Hunting Wives. I did finish this. You know how sometimes, like, okay, if you're reading a book or say watching a show or a movie and you're intrigued and you're really into it, not because you love what's going on, but because you're thankful that your life is not as big of a dumpster fire as what you are currently reading or watching. That's kind of the deal with The Hunting Wives. I did like this book a lot. I liked where it went. I did actually okay, I don't remember how much I told you before, but ultimately what happens is, I think the last time I talked to you, I was saying like, this isn't thrillery like your typical thriller. It's more thrillery like all the secrets that are being kept. Somebody turns up no longer living. That kind of becomes the forefront of the story. And of course, our main character, Sophie, things happen. You find out who committed the crime. You find out why. And it was a pretty satisfying end. Did I love everything that happened in this? No. Were these women who are almost 40 years old acting incredibly irresponsible? Yes, they were. But despite that, this was a good time. Now, as far as the scoring goes, I would say this book was pretty atmospheric. It takes place in Texas. In the spring, Texas spring is probably equivalent to a Michigan summer. And it's summer right now, so that's perfect. There was lots of talk of it being really hot. A lot of scenes take place out in nature, out in the garden, at a lake house. It was pretty decent, but not amazing. You know what I mean? So I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a 4 for atmosphere. The characters. Did I love the characters? No, I did not. I didn't love Sophie. Margot, on the other hand, I liked her. I didn't like her, but I did like her character. I liked what her character did for the story. She was a really good addition, just the drama surrounding her and everything like that. But that's about it. There weren't any characters that I like loved or anything. So I think for characters, I'm going to give this one a 3.5. Surprises. There are a couple things that happen that are quite surprising, quite twisty. I did kind of guess one of them, but I don't know if I guessed it at the part that you're supposed to guess it or if I just kind of picked up on it and if it was supposed to be a surprise. But when I did pick up on it, it was pretty close to being revealed anyways. I don't know, maybe that was the whole point, was for me to be reading this and kind of putting the pieces together and going, this is the person that did it. I don't know if that's the case, but that's how it happened for me. But there were a couple other things that happened as well. For surprises, I'm gonna give this a 4. And hook. How quickly was I hooked into this book? Fairly quickly. The whole rich people drama really drew me in. The toxic female friendship group, I love reading about that, so that really drew me in. And for a good portion of this book, I read in a single day. And didn't really want to put it down, only put it down when I had to, but very quickly wanted to continue on. I think for hook, I'm going to give this one 3.5. Overall, I am giving The Hunting Wives 4 stars, but for the purposes of this video, it is going to get a score of 3.75. The third and final book in this video is going to be The Chateau by Jaclyn Goldis. I'm not enjoying this, like at all. I'm about to go on a walk. I have an hour left in the audiobook, so I'm going to finish it right now. As far as the book hooking me, it has yet to hook me. I have been trudging through this book for a couple weeks now. It's been that long since I've updated you. I'm just not enjoying it. So these friends, there's a lot of characters too. So there's Darcy. Darcy is the granddaughter of Seraphine. Seraphine is the old lady that owns this huge chateau in France. And she, I guess back in the day, Darcy and her friends Vix and Jade, they grew up in the States, but they went to France. They like studied abroad in Avignon. I don't know, they have a history of spending time at the chateau. And yeah, and then there's also this French girl, Arabelle, who kind of joined their friend group. Her grandma, Arabelle's grandmother, is really close friends with Seraphine. Between that and befriending the other three girls, Arabelle has like become part of this group of friends. Seraphine supposedly invites the four girls to stay at the chateau kind of for one last time. She's getting up there. She ends up getting murdered. We've got that going on. And then there's also like this mystery Instagram account called like Watching You 88 or something like that, that is posting pictures of things that they're doing together and tagging them in it. And like these girls are like, oh my gosh, that's so creepy. That's so weird. Well, anyways, let's go do this. It's like, are you crazy? Like, clearly one of you is doing this. And then a lot of other things happen. And then, like, I'm seriously like 80-something% through the book at this point, I think. And then somehow there's like this World War II history piece to it all. And something about a painting, like I'm barely listening at this point. I started out tandem reading this book with the audiobook, and now I can't even be bothered to sit down with the book and read it with my eyes because I care that little. If I was not reading this book for this vlog specifically, I would have DNF'd it. But also too, this does not feel like a thriller. It feels like a mystery. Not only as to who killed Seraphine, but also like the other things, like the bits about like the World War II stuff and like a history, like part of their family. Like, I don't know. I don't care, you guys. I want it to be over. I'm gonna go for my walk and finish listening to this, give you a final update, and then I can finish out this vlog, which is the first installment of the series that I have yet to name. You know the name of it because I told you in the intro, but I don't know the name of it yet. Welcome back to Intro Me. I'm now wrapping up this vlog, but I have yet to tell you my score of The Chateau. I did finish it. I did not like it. For atmosphere, this book did a lot of telling instead of showing. And because this book takes place in a foreign country, it takes place in France, it was just a lot of the author like describing different places as if they're walking around and like, oh, I see this, I see that. I didn't like how the author went about doing that. So like I said, it gave a very telling, not showing type of way to the setting and pretty much all the surroundings. For atmosphere, I gave this one 2. For characters, I didn't give a crap about any of the characters, not a single one of them. As I mentioned earlier, all the characters were very similar and they each had their own POV. So it got to a point where it was really difficult to try to figure out, I don't know, like I couldn't necessarily, because there were so many, I couldn't necessarily keep track of each person's story just based on their name. I would have to like get into the chapter a little bit to try to like jog my memory of which of these characters this is and you know what's going on with them. Not a fan of the characters at all. For characters, I'm giving it a 2. Surprises, this book did not have a single surprise in it whatsoever. The person who done it to me felt very obvious. So I was not surprised when it was revealed that that was the person that was the culprit of everything going on. So for surprises, I'm giving this book a 1. And finally for hook, I was never hooked. I did not want to pick this book up. I did not want to read it. I didn't care about the ending. I didn't care about any of it. None of it. So for hook, I gave it a 1. All in all, for The Chateau, star rating wise, I did give this book a 2-star, but for the purposes of this video, it gets a score of 1.5. So let's wrap up the first episode of Book Genre Showdown. Of the 3 books that I read, Home is Where the Bodies Are rated a 3, The Hunting Wives rated a 3.75, and The Chateau rated a 1.5 for a grand total of 2.75 for the thriller genre. That is, of course, out of 5. Yeah, that's not very high. I think it's safe to say that thriller is probably not going to be crowned my favorite genre. All right, thank you so much for joining me in my first episode of Book Genre Showdown. I'm so excited to continue this series. I have a list of all the different genres that I want to explore and some ideas of which books I'll be reading for each one. Stay tuned for more videos in this series. Drop a comment down below on what your thoughts were and maybe let me know if you have any guesses guesses as to what my favorite genre is going to end up being, because I'm curious. You know when it's hard to describe yourself, but if you ask a friend, they can easily describe you? Maybe it's something like that. If you have an idea as to what my favorite genre is going to be, drop a guess down below. Thank you again so much for watching. Please do remember to like and subscribe, and until next time, bye.